Lamed Aleph Pasuk Vav is page 904. So yesterday we had mentioned the idea, we were talking about when they're going to war against Midian. So they were 1,000 warriors and 1,000 guys who watched the equipment. They're also considered part of the army, the essential part of the army. And then you have 1,000 guys who were at the battlefront davening. We were talking about that yesterday. We were talking about the idea of davening. We had mentioned the idea of making 100 brachas a day. If you stop and think about it, make a calculation. You know that we try to make 100 brachas a day. Now the truth is that if you daven 3 times a day, so right there you have 3 times Shema Nesrei, 3 times 19 is 57. Right, triple 19 on a dartboard, and it is. What can I do? I didn't do it. Yeah, that's the math. The triple 19, and what's the official distance in competitive darts? Do you know? Yeah, they have. There's no. Yeah, 10 amas is 10 out of 20 feet. No, man. Because so we used to play. They throw darts. Sometimes we had a dartboard in the basement. I always won. If I lost, I threw darts at my brother. But the triple 19. So you got 57 right there. You got 14 brachas in the morning. Shalom Sani Goy, Shalom Sani Ev, Shalom Sani Isha. Right, those 14 brachas. So you're already up to 71. And then you eat twice a day, 3 times a day. You bench. It's generally on a weekday. It's not hard to get the 100 brachas. If you're a teenager, you probably make 100 brachas just between meals, just snacking between meals. But that's what they say. Dinner time is when a teenager sits down to continue eating. So but if you make a calculation, let's say you do it every day. In the course of a week, you make 700 brachas. In a month, you make 2,800 brachas. In a year, let's just round up, you make 30,000 brachas. In 10 years, you've made 300,000 brachas. In 30 years, you've basically made 1,000,000 brachas. I'm rounding up a little bit. So imagine a guy lives 75 years. He started making brachas when he was bar mitzvah. So by the time he finished his life, he's made 2.5 million brachas. And then he doesn't know what he said. Baruch atah Hashem. A guy comes up to the heavenly court after all these years, and they say to him, well, did you daven? I davened. Did you learn Torah? Did you made brachas? How many brachas? Oh, about 2.5 million. Yeah, what does Baruch atah Hashem mean? Blessed art thou, O Lord. Why were you blessing me? I created you. Oh, you know what? I never thought of that. You said something 2.5 million times, and you didn't think about it? You think what you're saying? Blessed art thou, O Lord. So I told you yesterday, it's not a blessing as much as a declaration. Like we say in the Shema Nesrei, Ata Kadosh, you are holy. Why are we doing that? What's all this stuff about praising God? You're holy, you're this, you're great, you're humble. Why? The answer is to internalize it for ourselves. The word tefillah comes from the Hebrew word palel, which is to penetrate. We're trying to penetrate. Why? They always make fun of us. They're very cynical. People who don't daven. They say, "Yeah, don't worry. I don't. God doesn't need my praise. God doesn't need my. We're not praising God for God. God doesn't need anything from us. We're praising God for ourselves. The more we say Atah Kadosh, we realize what our role in life is. Realize what God is, what our relationship is. If you make a declaration 100 times a day, you are the source of the fruit. You are the source of the food. You are the source of my health. So there's a greater appreciation, a greater connection with God. That's the idea. We're not doing it for God. He doesn't need anything from us. We're doing it for ourselves. So that so you say it 100 times a day, 2 million, 3 million times in the course of a lifetime, that should have an effect on a person's relationship. As I told you yesterday, if you'd say that to your mother, Mom, you are the source of my joy, thank you for supper. You are the source of my joy, thank you for paying my tuition. You are the source of my joy, thank you for getting off my back. Whatever you say, but at the end of the day, creates a different relationship. Okay. Now, they go off to war, and then you'll notice that, take a look at Pasuk Vav. It's on page 904. 904, 6 lines, 5 lines from the top. 904. Vayishlach Osa Moshe elef lamata latzova. Moshe sends them off. Osam them ve'es Pinchas ben Elazar hakohet. Pinchas goes off with them latzova. Uklei hakodesh v'chatzotzos hatruos biyado. You've got the holy utensils and the trumpets are with him. Are with him. Now, why is Pinchas going? Because Pinchas is the one who started the mitzvah. There's a concept when you start a mitzvah, you should finish it. Hamaschil b'mitzvah omrin lo gvor. You started a mitzvah, you should. Where did Pinchas start the mitzvah? Where did Pinchas start the mitzvah? When he stabbed them, when he killed the Midianite woman. Right? How's that for a mitzvah? Baruch atah Hashem borei pri ha-Midianite. Right? And so Pinchas goes and he stabs, he goes and he kills them. Then he goes off to war. Now the question the commentaries ask over here is, we've had other wars. In the previous part, they destroyed Sichon, they destroyed Og, they fought Amalek, they fought all these wars. How come this is the only time the Torah makes mention of the clay, he takes the Aron Kodesh with, that's the clay HaKodesh, they go with the Aron Kodesh, and they take the Chatzotzos, the trumpets, the holy trumpets with them. Why is this the only war where these trumpets are like these trumpets are essentially, you got a little cold over there? Is that too cold for you? Yeah. You're sitting in a bad spot. What's your name?
Yotam.
Yotam. Yeah, Yotam. You're sitting in a bad spot over there. You make it? Okay. Well, if anything happens, give a call for help. The Trump. When you hear a shofar, when you think of a shofar, so what do you think of a shofar? Shofar is a holy item, right? Right, we're thinking of the shofar. It's got the call of shofar. But we look at a shofar, the trumpets that they took were a holy item. It wasn't just a noisemaker. It wasn't just Louis Armstrong playing some blues. It was the trumpets were a holy item, and it's certainly their own kodesh. Why is it that in this war they're taking the Aron Kodesh, not in the other wars? They fought Sichon, they fought Og, they fought Amalek, they fought the Egyptians. How come over here all of a sudden they're taking the Aron Kodesh with them? What? There are less people, so they got to rely on. There's more what? Oh! Now you're getting there. You see, all the other wars were defensive wars. Hey, there's the enemies attacking you, or it's a war of conquest. Either defensive, like when Amalek attacked, or it's a war of conquest. We're conquering land. The battle with Midian over here is not a battle of conquest. The battle with Midian is a battle. It's an ideological battle, fighting against what Midian represented, which was idol worship and immorality. And therefore, the items that they take with them in this war, they take the Aron Kodesh, and they take that's a reminder of what they're fighting against over here. They're fighting against, it's a war, it's a religious war, what they call a religious war, as opposed to a war of conquest. Now, so what happens? Look at the next pasuk, pasuk Zayin. Vayitzbu al Midian kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. They, how does he translate Vayitzbu? They massed against the Midianites. Vayargu kol zachar. They kill all the males. Ves malchei Midian hargu al chalalehem. They killed the kings of Midian and the corpses. According to some, the kings were, Rashi brings down that the Midianite kings were flying through the air. Bilam, through sorcery, had them flying through the air. And Bilam Pinchas brought them down by flashing the tzitz worn by the Kohen Gadol. He flashed it at them. Any similarities to Harry Potter is probably because she read the Bible. As I assume in all the movies that they got their ideas from the Bible. By the way, do you know that in The Wizard of Oz, tell me you haven't heard of The Wizard of Oz. You've all heard of The Wizard of Oz, right? Not Oz. Because I think that's the one, yes. and so in The Wizard of Oz, when she pours water on her, I'm melting. Where did they get that idea to kill the witch with water? It's correct. The Gemara says that a person who's attached to water is immune to witchcraft. How do you like that? So I assume that the people who wrote The Wizard of Oz, whoever whoever was involved with it, there was probably some off the derech yeshiva guy who was he remembered in yeshiva learning about that. That was the one thing he remembered, and he probably got involved in somehow in the script. A lot of these things you find. So over here it says they killed them al chalaleim. I think they should be translated as corpses. How does he translate it? They killed along with the slain ones, and according to the Mefarshim, they actually fell. They were up in the air, they killed the army, and then they killed the kings, and the kings fell on the corpses. That's al chalaleim. See, the positive plain meaning means in addition to the slain ones. That's the plain meaning, is al chalaleim in addition to the slain ones. But according to the word al, literally means on, so they fell down on them. As Eviv, as Rekev, as Ur, as Chor, as Zerach, Hameshas, Malchei Midian. Those are the 5 kings of Midian. And unlike in other battles where you go for the kings first, you go for the kings because that always demoralizes the army. You try to kill the king, try to kill the generals, that demoralizes the army. Here they purposely killed the regular soldiers to show that we're not intimidated over here. We'll kill the regular, then we'll go after the kings. Ves Bilam ben Beor hargo becherev, and they also killed Bilam. Bilam was flying around too, and they killed Bilam. That's what the result of the war. Now, then the Jewish people are now going to take the Torah is going to go into the entire conquest of how they take the Midian. Now, pay attention carefully because they're very, very subtle. Vayishbu v'nei Yisrael es neshei Midian. They took the women captives. Ve'es tapam ve'es kol behemtam ve'es kol mikdeim ve'es kol chilalam bazu. They took the women, the children, the animals, all their flock, and all of their booty. All the property they took as booty. Now, one of the commentaries says like this: why does it mention? And it's a very subtle point, but it's a very interesting answer. In Pasuk Tes, when it says the Vayishbu b'nei Yisrael es neshei Midian, the b'nei Yisrael captured the women of Midian. Now, this is the first time you'll notice that it says that it refers to B'nai Yisrael. All along it says from the tribe of Yisrael, from the tribe. Also it says the B'nai Yisrael captured the women of Midian.
The boys.
Huh? The boys. Well, boy doesn't have, here it means these soldiers who went to the war. But why does it say B'nai Yisrael? Why does it say B'nai Yisrael? All of a sudden it says B'nai Yisrael when they captured the women. What? How you doing? Why does it say, huh? They spread out. They I mean, it's 1,000. You got 1,000 army, 1,000 soldiers here capturing all these people, a tremendous amount of people. So one of the Mefarshim says like this. You see, there's a problem. Where would they get the women from? Where are the women to capture them? They're inside the tent. Now this is a problem because if the Jewish men go into the tent, one man goes into the tent, so then you got a problem of yichud. You got a problem being alone with another, alone with a woman. Even though you're capturing her at war, but you're going in, what the? Right, that's even worse. Yichud is prohibited even with non-Jewish women. Yichud is prohibited. Yichud means the idea of being alone with a woman who's not either your mother, sister, daughter, grandmother. Right, that's the prohibition of yichud.
But if someone, a man could walk in at any time, really it's not yichud, isn't it?
Good, so that's why they went in two together. B'nai Yisrael, they made sure to go in pairs. That's why it emphasizes B'nai Yisrael. They went in pairs so that no man should be alone. No man should be alone with the pretty sharp, right? No man should go. That's why it emphasizes B'nai Yisrael over here. I was in America recently. I was in America and I was in a house where my host was staying, and they had a non-Jewish cleaning lady who used to come a couple of times a week. Now I came home from shul, and I walk into the house, and she was there all along. She was there in the house, and everybody was out of the house. They had gone to work. The kids were out. They went to school. I walked into the house, and she was there alone. So the first thing I did is I stepped out of the house, and I went back to the shul. And I was in the shul. The shul was about half a block away. So I walked in. I figured he's coming home soon. I knew he's supposed to be home, but I can't be in the house alone with her. So I walked out of the house. I went over to the shul, and I found there were a couple of Talmidei Chachamim were there. And I said, because in Israel we don't have. Most people do not have cleaning women who come into the house. It's in America, it's very common. So I asked a couple of these guys, what do you guys do about having cleaning ladies? So they told me that the halacha is, since anyone, the way what they do is they give a key to the house to a neighbor who could come into the house at any time. And since somebody could come into the house any time, so that and not only that, one of the guys who I happen to ask usually says, I know where you're staying, your host. I plan on coming this morning to the house. So that's the halacha, that's the protection. Now, there are the halachas of yichud. The halachas of yichud, by the way, are for example, if a man is in the house, there's a woman in the house. There's a man in the house, as long as her husband is in the town, Baila Ba'ir, her husband is in the town, so she's not good. There's not going to be any hanky-panky because she's worried her husband could come home at any time. But these are halachas that you have to be aware of. But for instance, a woman and a man in a car alone at night in the dark, if it's a dark, isolated place, or like in an isolated forest or a beach, the halachas can get very, very tricky. The halachas of yichud. Be that as it may, by the way, they even ask about an elevator. Let's say you're in an office building, you get into an elevator with a woman, there's only you and the woman in the elevator. Are you allowed to be alone in the elevator with a woman? So there, Rav Moshe Feinstein says yes. You could go get into an elevator, a quick ride up in the elevator. Rav Moshe Feinstein says that's not a problem. Anybody could be coming in at any time, except when it's in transit.
So
Most people,
be alone with two men.
if they're God-fearing, yeah. If a man alone with two women, no. A woman along with two men who are God-fearing, yes, that's what the halacha is. So that's why it says it specifically says the Bnei Israel. Okay, now skip down to the bottom of the page, and look what happens over here. Vayetzu, 4 lines from the bottom. Now they're coming back with all the captives, the women, and the booty and everything else. So look down at the bottom of the page, 4 lines from the bottom. Vayetzu Moshe ve'Elazar HaKohen. Moshe and Elazar HaKohen, remember Aaron has died, so it's his son Elazar who's taken over. V'chol nesiei ha'eda likrosem, and all of the heads of the congregation. El michutz lamachane. Vayikzof Moshe al pikudei ha'chol. Moshe gets angry. Sorei alofi v'sorei ha'meos ha'bay mitzvah ha'machol. Moshe gets angry. Vayomer aleim Moshe ha'chayisem kol nekeva. You've left women alive. Why is Moshe angry?
They kind of caused trouble recently.
Yeah. What happened to you guys? Now, did he tell them to kill the women?
No.
So why is he getting angry?
It was obvious, maybe, like a given.
As-
They were the ones that caused all the trouble before.
As my father, Olavashon, said to me many times, you should have known. There are certain things you should have realized that. You didn't understand you're going to war. They were the items that caused the Jewish people to think you didn't realize you're supposed to kill the women. But watch this, gentlemen. Look at this. It says in Pasuk on bottom, on 2 lines from the bottom, it says, Vayikzof Moshe al pikudei ha'chayil. He gets angry at them. Look at the top of the next page. Vayomer Aleha Moshe HaChayisem Kol Nekeva. Why does it introduce this with Vayomer Aleha Moshe? We know Moshe is talking. So why does it introduce it? It says Moshe gets angry at them, and it should then say HaChayisem Kol Nekeva. Why does it then repeat Vayomer Aleha Moshe HaChayisem Kol Nekeva?
When you get angry, you lose.
And therefore what?
Therefore, he can't command. He doesn't know what to do with them. So he has to-
That's why that's true, but why does it say Vayomer Aleha Moshe?
Well, Hashem spoke through Moses.
No. What happened here? It should have said Vayikzof Moshe al pikudei ha'chayil, Vayomer ha'chayisem kol nekeva. But it doesn't say that. It says Vayikzof Moshe aleim. Then it says Vayomer aleim Moshe. We know it's why it should say Vayomer aleim. Why does it say Vayomer aleim Moshe? What?
Calm down.
Yes. In other words, Moshe got angry. But before addressing the people, what does it say? Vayomer aleim Moshe. First he counts 10. In other words, it's a new, which is a life rule. There's a rule. If you ever feel like telling somebody off, at that moment, don't. Don't tell somebody off when you feel like telling them off, because you're just going to do it out of anger. First, calm down. Moshe gets angry, but first Moshe calms down, and he says, hey, you guys kept the women alive. Meaning you should have known better than that. Why? They are the ones who caused them, and there was a plague. And now I'm giving you a command. Kill all the males. Any woman suitable for a man, meaning all the girls over 3 years old, kill. The rest you could keep. Keep them as servants. According to some, you're going to convert them. But the rest you could keep. Okay. So, what was Moshe? First of all, why did they keep the women alive? Why did they keep the women alive? And why is it that Moshe is saying that those women got to be killed? Why did they keep them alive? If it was so obvious that Moshe got angry at them that you should have realized it, so why did they keep the women alive? They were also, you're talking about top, high caliber people over here. So why did they keep the women alive? What's that? For the women to do tshuva? No, they're not interested in helping them to do tshuva. They're not interested in helping the Midianites to do tshuva. The answer is, according to the Mefarshim, they felt that if we kill the women, then it turns it into almost a human vengeance endeavor. We're taking revenge for those who stumbled. We're taking revenge for that. We want to demonstrate that this is a battle for the sake of God. We're doing it only because God said to do it. And we therefore will not do that which indicates that it was somehow human related. And Moshe Rabbeinu still says, yeah, but that was a mistake. You shouldn't have been making calculations. You should have done the logical thing and go and kill them. Now that they're here, now kill them. Okay. So Moshe is emphasizing to them, what's more dangerous? A physical danger or a spiritual danger? We always are of the approach that a spiritual danger is more dangerous to the Jewish people than a physical danger. The spiritual danger is where we'll give up our lives, according to halacha, you have to die, rather than sin at the highest level of spiritual contamination. Idol worship, immorality, murder. Sometimes people say, well, the most important thing, they say in Hebrew, ha'ikar habriyut. Most important thing is good health. True, up to a point. Up to a point. Because when a person dies, their health is seriously compromised. All studies have indicated that somebody dead has got serious health issues. Yet a person has to give up his life rather than worship idols. So life is not the ultimate value. People think life is the ultimate value. Not true. The ultimate value is what God wants us to do. That's the ultimate value. And if a person is meant to die rather than sin, so that becomes the ultimate value. And that's what Moshe is saying. Okay. Now we go to the section we already saw this once before, and this has to do with koshering. But this is an extremely penetrating idea. Vayomer Elazar HaKohen el Anshe Hatzava Aboim LaMilchama. And this is what Daniel was mentioning. These laws, Moshe Rabbeinu, because he got angry, he forgot these laws. And that's why Elazar is the one who's presenting these laws. When you get angry, the Gemara says that when you get angry, a person who gets angry, Kol Mine Gehenim Sholting Bo. He experiences all sorts of different forms of Gehenna. When a person gets angry, it's as if he's worshiping idols. So the Gemara says, somebody who gets angry, you should view him as if he's worshiping idols. Why is that? What's getting angry got to do with idol worship?
Hashem's not in control of the situation.
Exactly correct. In other words, if you think about it, most times in life that you get angry, what are you really angry about? What are you really angry about? The actual situation is probably not that terrible. What are you angry about? The fact that I'm not in control. I told my kids to do something and they didn't do it. It wasn't the end of it. Somebody didn't cap the toothpaste properly. In the grand scheme of things in life, in the grand scheme of things, in the broader picture, not capping the toothpaste is really not that bad. It's really not a terrible, terrible thing to not cap the toothpaste, except that it's annoying because it gets crusty at the top and you got to dig it out. But compared to getting stuck in traffic, why do you get angry when you're stuck in traffic? Why do we get angry when you're stuck in traffic?
We're going somewhere.
We would like to be going somewhere. Usually it's not because of the consequences, the frustration. What are these people doing on my highway? One of the most unreasonable approaches in life is, oh, there's traffic. Well, you're part of the traffic. You're his traffic. He's not just your traffic, you're his traffic. But you're traffic too. You're on my highway. You're on my planet. That's why it's tantamount to idol worship. Now, you want to hear this? Now I'm going to shock you. You know what the Gemara says? A person who gets angry will experience all sorts of Gehenna. And not only that, he'll have hemorrhoids. That's what the Gemara says. Tachtonias. Now, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question. If you think about it, which is worse, Gehenna or hemorrhoids? Right? Which you think is worse, Gehenna, eternal damnation, or hemorrhoids? Right? So if you tell a guy, for example, let's say you say to a guy, listen, a guy committed a crime. We're sentencing you to 25 years in prison. You know what 25 years in prison means? We're taking away your liberty. And not only that, you're not going to have Super Crunch peanut butter. And now the truth of the matter is that 25 years of loss of liberty is pretty bad. Super Crunch peanut butter, I would really like, Super Crunch, but compared to, so first of all, if anything, what I would say is, first of all, there's no more Super Crunch peanut butter for you. Second of all, we're taking away 25 years of your liberty. I would upgrade it. I wouldn't downgrade it. You understand? You don't downgrade. It's like your father, when your father got upset with you, what did your father say? He says, first of all, it starts with the little thing. Then he gets to the big thing. He doesn't start with the big thing. First of all, we're taking away the car. Now, you're not driving for 2 weeks. Second of all, no Super Crunch peanut butter. It doesn't work that way. It works in the other direction. You upgrade the punishment. You don't. So why would the Gemara say? The Gemara says, first of all, eternal damnation, various levels of flames in purgatory for you. And second of all, hemorrhoids. Right? And again, which one is worse? Eternal. Okay. So the Stipler says an interesting principle over here. From a human nature point of view, which one spooks you more? In other words, when it's tangible, Gehenna, we all believe in Gehenna, but it's still somewhat removed from us because it's this abstract spiritual embarrassment. It's a somewhat removed. But when you get down to business, and you talk about pain, you talk about discomfort. Oh boy. The Cypress says that's why when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was on his deathbed, so the Talmidim came into Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and they said, Rabbi, give us a bracha before you die. He says, you should fear God as much as you fear man. They said, that's it? He says, that's plenty. Because when a person sins, when a person does something wrong, it's because he looks around and says, nobody's watching me. No humans are watching me. With God, me and God, we're like this. I'll work it out with Hashem. But people, I want to be I have a reputation when nobody's around, so I open up the refrigerator, grab a salami, and take a bite out of it. But if there are people in the house, all of a sudden I'm Mr. Dignity. Knife and the fork come out. Because with people, you want to maintain a certain standard. So it's more tangible. The more tangible punishment is the one that's the upgrade in that situation. Now, look what Rabbi Eliezer says. Vayomer Elazar HaKohen al Anshe Hatzava Ba'im LaMilchama. Zos chukas haTorah asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. Remember, we pointed out that this expression Zos chukas haTorah appears somewhere else. Where?
For the red cow.
For the red cow, exactly correct. It introduces the red cow as Zos chukas haTorah. What was the common denominator? Why here and why there? Why did there both these sections of the Torah, where it talks about koshering utensils and the red cow, are both introduced with those chukas? This is the law of the Torah. Zos chukas haTorah. So what's that?
Does it make no sense?
Say again?
They make no sense.
Which makes no sense.
These long
You're half right.
red cow and-
The red cow from a human perspective makes very little sense. Why does a red cow, we don't have a red cow with the ashes that purifies you from tumah. Whereas when it comes to koshering, makes a lot of sense. If it absorbed it, the level of heat that it absorbed non-kosher food, that's the level of heat you need to kosher it. If you roasted on an open fire non-kosher food with a spit, so you have to roast the spit in a fire to burn it out what it absorbed. If it was cooked, so you have to put it in hot water. It's a perfect parallel. It makes a lot of sense. You're burning out the physical absorbed, whatever level it was absorbed in physically. That's the level of heat that you need to burn it out. It makes the most sense. It's a perfectly logical, physiologically, it makes a lot of sense. And that's why they both are introduced with those chukas HaTorah to remind us that it has nothing to do with your logic. Para Aduma is a statute because God said so. And even when the halacha is perfectly logical, it's because God said so. Zos chukas, it's a law of the Torah. You understand it, you don't understand it, makes sense, doesn't make sense. It's a law of the Torah. That's the bottom line, not because it makes sense to you, but what degree it makes sense to you. Okay? More than that. Take a look for a second. Open, keep your finger on the place here on 906. Open anywhere in the book of Bereshis. Anywhere, it doesn't matter. Just get to the book of Bereshis and look at the top of the page, all the way above the black line, where it says Sefer Bereshis. Do you see Sefer Bereshis at the top of the page? At the right corner. Anywhere in the book. Okay. Now look at that word Bereshis for a second. Look at the word Bereshis. Look at the first two letters. What are the first two letters? Bar, Beis and a Resh. What are the last two letters? A Yud and a Tuf. Combine those letters and you get the word bris, which is a covenant. What are the two middle letters? Aish. It is a covenant of fire. The Torah is a covenant of fire. You've heard of the Kabbalistic statement that the Torah existed as a black fire, as a white fire on a black fire. A black fire on a white fire before the Torah was given to man. It existed as a black fire on a white fire. You never heard that statement? The Torah, before it was put into physical form, existed in Shemayim as a black fire on a white fire. The letters of black fire on a white fire. Okay? The tablets were.
Also were the black fire on the white too?
Well, it says about the Torah. It says the Torah itself. The tablets doesn't say that. It says on the Torah itself. Yeah, it's a black fire. Okay, so the Torah is a fire. Now, here we're talking about, let's read a pasuk. Let's read the pasuk for pasuk 22. Aches hazav es hakesef, the gold, the silver, es hanechoshes, es habarzel, the copper, the metal, es habedil ves ophares. The what materials are those? The bedil and ophares. Iron, tin, the lead. Kol davar asher yavo ba'esh taviru ba'esh. Anything that comes through in a fire, so you pass it through a fire, v'taher. Ach b'mei nida yischata, but then you have to immerse it in the mikveh. V'chol asher lo yavo eish v'der taviru b'mayim. So it tells you how to kasher it. When you kasher the utensils, you have to burn it out with the fire. Says Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, the Torah itself is a fire. How do you do tshuva? How does a person do tshuva? Person various, whatever misdeeds that a person has engaged in or feels that they've engaged in. How does a person then purify himself and do tshuva? Zos chukas haTorah. This is the nature of Torah. Torah is a fire that purifies us. That means if a person is looking to do tshuva, the best way to do tshuva is by studying Torah. Torah is the fire that purifies us. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein has a series of correspondences where people have asked him, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein how to do tshuva for various averas. How do you do tshuva for various averas? I did tshuva for various. One was a frum girl who was working in an office and got involved in immorality. One was a yeshiva guy who got involved in various forms of immorality, whether what we would consider natural ones, unnatural ones. In all of the answers, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says, in the old days, people fast, and they engage in various acts of self-flagellation and various forms of self-torture in order to try to cleanse themselves. Rav Moshe finds, he says, we don't do that. When a person starts fasting, when you fast, you're not productive. When you fast, most of the day, you're just walking around thinking about what you're going to eat after the fast. And you're weak and you're hard to concentrate. The best way for a person to purify himself is to study Torah. That is the ultimate mikveh. That's the ultimate form of immersion, is to study Torah. Torah is a fire that purifies our soul. Torah is a fire that purifies a person. That's why people who study Torah, why is it this? It's some sort of coincidence, it's a societal coincidence, that people who are involved in Torah study, there's less crime, there's less immorality, there's less misbehavior, there's less vulgarity, there's less of everything. Why? Where's that coming from? Where's that energy? What's happening there? I think I told you, my sons went to yeshiva. They all went to yeshiva. So I always use an example. One of my sons went to yeshiva. There were 600 males between the ages of 18 and 22, 23 in a dormitory situation. 600 males in a dormitory. And in the course of 4 or 5 years, there was never one fist fight. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Take any other group in the world. It doesn't matter what the group is. Secular Jews, Irishmen, Italians, Frenchmen, put 600 of them in a dormitory between the ages of 18 and 22. Do you think you'll ever see a fist fight?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Every day.
And if they're Italians?
Definitely.
Every hour. I think so. Yeah, I think so. I had a guy here once at Ohr Somayach. He told me that he held the lights for a photographer. He was the guy who held the lights for a photographer. The photographer, and he was the light guy. So he said he was once working in Italian. He was working in an Italian wedding, and he said as they came in through the back, there was a puddle of blood. He said that's where the groom's friends beat up the caterer. So what is it? Where's the magic? What's the magic? What's the trigger? How did it happen? The answer is primarily because of studying Torah. It also helps to put on tefillin, because that does something to us, and having a mezuzah on the wall. By the way, I got to put up two new mezuzahs in my house, because my aunt moved in with us with and so we built her a special section in the house. We had to break a couple of walls. So I only realized yesterday we broke one wall, which was the main wall of the house, to the backyard, so that they should have a private entrance. So that wall needs a mezuzah. But we also broke, there was an inner room, we broke from one room to another and created another entrance. I have to buy 2 mezuzahs, which is probably going to set me back at least $200. A mezuzah nowadays, it starts at about $100. I'm happy to do it for the mitzvah. Yeah, mezuzahs are expensive. What do you look at me? $100 cheap?
No, just for the club.
Just for the cloth. Yeah, it doesn't have to, the outside doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, what do you call it, the end. I'm talking about the parchment. Just the parchment itself what's that? Why don't you start writing mezuzahs? Start, and then you'll tell me why you don't. It's a very difficult, to be a sofer is a very, it's not, you don't become a millionaire. It's a very difficult, you got to learn the halachas, and you got to sit there in the room all by yourself writing. How fast do you know how long it takes to write a mezuzah? It can take about 4, 5, 6 hours to write a mezuzah. It's not like you're on easy street because you write a mezuzah. Based on your writing, if your writing is beautiful. I've seen writing. I remember when going to buy tefillin. So I went into the sofer. The guy has on a board laminated an example of the various types of. Now, I don't know anything about the subject. I never studied the subject. I don't know exactly what the halachas are. But even a layman, he's got a board with about 8 or 9 samples of the sofrim who he's like the middleman. Now, some of the parchments are cheaper, and as you go down this board, they get more expensive. I want to tell you something. Some of the writing look like writing. By the time you get to the most expensive ones, it looks like it was machine printed. the writing is so precise and so tight, and so there's skill levels. There are skill levels, but there are also halachic levels. Exactly what details of halacha, which are some of the optional details. So I'm just telling you that the mezuzahs start at about 100. I asked the guy yesterday. He told me it's anywhere between $100 and $250 a mezuzah. So okay, for the mitzvah we spend money. At a restaurant you spend more, right? Right? At a restaurant, you had no problem with the wine at the restaurant. So for a mezuzah, we could spend it. In any event, that's what Moshe Feinstein says. That the what do you call it? Now, one more question here, gentlemen, and this you have to pick up. Take a look again at Pasuk 21. 10 lines from the top. Again, it's very subtle, gentlemen. Pick this up now. Vayomer Elazar HaKohen el Anshe HaTzava Aboim LaMilchama. Elazar HaKohen said to the men of the army coming to the war, Zos Chukas HaTorah, etc. Anything about that pasuk strike you as strange? Elazar HaKohen said to the men of the army coming to the war. What? Because he's talking to them. He's talking to the soldiers.
Shouldn't they be coming from the war?
Excellent. Why is it coming to the war? He spoke to the soldiers. They're coming back from the war. La milchama means to the war. It should say meha milchama. Okay. So, what's that?
Torah's not written in chronological order.
No, that doesn't work on one part. That only works on stories, not on items.
Now they have their internal battle.
Oh, very good. Avram, very good. Very good. In other words, like this. There are two answers. One answer is that we'll see later on, not one of them died. Not one of them died. Not one Jew died. So the men who were coming to the war, those who went out to the war, let's talk about the guys who went to the war, they're all coming back from the war. So he's talking to all the guys who had gone to the war. Not one of them died. Okay. But then there's what Avram says, like this. There's a date. Why is it, you mentioned that the woman before, about the Jew at the battlefront takes the woman. Why does the Torah, we're going to talk about it in Parashat Kiseitze, where the Torah allows that? Because a man who goes to war, you're in a certain state. You've killed, you could have been killed, you're in a very, very, you are a survivor. And if you emerge victorious, where's the danger?
Arrogance.
Right? You're carried away with yourself a little bit. That's when a person is most vulnerable to the evil inclination. When our ego is out of control, we think we can conquer the world. We forget about our limitations. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, you're coming to the war. The men coming back from the battlefront, but you're coming, says Elazar, you're coming. The Torah says they're the men who are going to the war. What's the war? The war with the Yetzer Hara, with evil inclination, which is a war that's constant. You never defeat him. We may be able to control him, but we never ever defeat him. We are never at a point that we're free, except when?
When you're studying Torah?
When it says you're protected. When are we totally free? The pasuk says, "La mesim chofshi." When a person dies, then he's free of the Yetzer Hara. Then the battle is relentless. The battle is always, and he comes with various forms of strategies. He comes with frontal assaults, and he comes from the side. By the way, which animal represents the Yetzer Hara?
Snakes.
The snake. Isn't it interesting? Snakes have all sorts of forms of attack. Sometimes there's a rattle, so you know there's Yetzer Hara coming. Sometimes sometimes they wrap around you like a boa constrictor, like you feel like you're totally consumed with the Yetzer Hara. Sometimes they get you low in the most unprotected part of the body, right in the heel. Don't they nail you in the heel? They're quick. Everything about it, they're camouflaged. I'm walking in, I don't even know there's Yetzer Hara lurking here. They get you a little bit of venom, one penetration, and you're totally consumed with it. He gets you in one area and you're conquered. The Yetzer Hara is very similar to a snake. Very similar to a snake. I think Seinfeld once said that, where people take showers, and they spend a lot of time scrubbing your chest, soaping up your chest. What really needs to be soaped up is the feet and the hand, but we don't want to bend down and get everything. It's too hard. But that's the part that's most vulnerable for dirt is the feet, is really what needs to be good. Where does the snake always get? Right in the ankle. Right? The snake gets you, the snake is always behind you, nail it. That's the Yetzer Hara. The battle is relentless. La milchama. We're always headed for war. We're always headed for the battlefront. That's why Eliezer is saying it over here. And you're especially vulnerable when you've had a victory. Imagine you overcome the Yetzer Hara. You get on the train and you control your eyes. You think, yeah, got him licked. I got him licked. I beat him. I'm beyond this test. Then you turn in the next direction, kaboom. Things are only worse over there. And that's why the test of the Yetzer Hara, the test, what you call the internal test, which is what it is, by the way. It's the internal test. It's the constant battle. That's a battle always under all circumstances. And as soon as we think that we've defeated him in one area, when Yaakov Avinu fights the angel, so he says, "What's your name?" He says to the angel, "What's your name?" What did the angel answer him? Yaakov said to the Malach, "What's your name?" What did he answer him? Lama zet tishal lishmi. Why do you ask my name? Why do you ask my name? Why? Huh?
It's an interesting game.
Interesting game. So according to some, he said to him, "What's your name? Why do you ask?" Because I want to know. I told you. What did you tell me? Why do you ask? It's like, who's on first?
Who's on first?
The name of the Yetzer Hara is, why do you ask? Meaning, sometimes in life, we don't investigate where we really should. If we would think about it and investigate in advance, we wouldn't end up in that situation. Lama zet tishal lishmi. His technique is, don't ask, don't investigate, just get involved, just do it. Isn't that the Nike slogan? Just do it. Oh, by the way, with any imagination at all, that Nike swoosh, doesn't that look a little bit like a snake? Just do it. Don't think about it. Don't think about the consequences. Lama zet tishal lishmi. What are you asking my name? Lama zet tishal. Don't ask. Just do it. But you see, it's more than that. Lama zet tishal lishmi means, what difference is it what my name is right now? You defeated me? So you defeated one part of me. I come and attack you some other way. You got control over your anger? So I'll get you on desire. You got control of desire? I'll get you on ego. You got control, I'll get you on stinginess. I'm all over the place. You'll never know. You're never going to finish. They got too many names. Lama zet tishal lishmi, that's the name. All right, gentlemen. To be continued.